FME OK, and you're in the stream. People across Algeria will soon vote on proposed amendments to their constitution. The government says changes will bring a new republic. Critics say it is a thinly disguised power grab. Today we'll look at what lies ahead for the country. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, send us your comments and questions through the live chat and be part of today's conversation. On Twitter, you can tweet us at AJStream. As Algeria's President Abdelmadjid Tebboune receives treatment in Germany for an undisclosed illness, the government is trying to remain focused on winning support for constitutional changes in a referendum on Sunday. Tebboune's administration says the draft gives the office of the Prime Minister and Parliament more power. It also addresses demands of the Hirak protest movement that in April 2019 forced then President Abdelaziz Bouteflika to step down. But opposition parties disagree. Here's what both sides have been saying.
We chose the 1st of November for the referendum on this constitution, which is considered another occasion for the people to come together with all their sects and orientations and to draw a new milestone to build our future. A democratic and modern state based on a power-sharing scheme.
It is not the people. There is no will of the people in this constitution. There are lobbies that have means, that are protected. They have money, the media, and many relations. It is them that this constitution benefits.
For more, we are joined from Glasgow, Scotland, by Zain Labadine Ebouli. He is an independent analyst and scholar. Brahim Rouabah is an Algerian activist and political analyst. He is in New York City. And Yasmina Alouche is an Algerian researcher, journalist and analyst who specialises in the Maghreb. She joins us from London. Hello, everybody. It's really good to see you. Yasmina, you start first. This idea that the amendment to the Constitution is giving protesters in Algeria what they wanted. They have been protesting for 18 months now. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
So if we're looking at the political roadmap that the regime has adopted of these constitutional amendments, it's something that mirrors several occasions in its history. But what the issue is that a lot of what's proposed by these constitutional drafts, which were done, in 3 months, and if you compare that, for example, with Tunisia and its own process with constitutional amendments, it took several years. So these were done, quite swiftly this year, and they're supposed to represent or appease the Hirak's demands. But if the main issue really is the disparities between what is said and what's written on paper, and the lack of implementation, which is what's been mirrored a number of times in Algeria's history. So there's talk of a separation of powers. There's certain issues concerning the prerogatives of the president, the head of the government, the parliament, the judiciary, and the fight against corruption, which is all great. But the issues really are the climate in which these amendments are taking place. So, for example, if you look at the referendum campaigning, which began earlier this month, there hasn't been much scope for opponents to take up public spaces or media spots to talk about what the reason why they'll be voting no, whereas those who are very much for the process have been able to speak to the public. And if we look at comments made by the Minister of Youth and Sport last week, in which he told Algerians who are unhappy with the process that they should change countries, then it kind of doesn't, if we're looking at the process and the talk of a new Algeria, a new republic, and built on the foundations of a modern state that is at the service of a civilian, then it doesn't really embody those principles of the Constitution basically enshrined.
Yasmin, I am looking at this headline here from Middle East Eye. Algeria minister tells people to leave if they disagree with constitutional amendments. Zain, what do you make of the claim by the current administration in Algeria? This is going to be a new republic. Come Sunday, the constitution amendment, this is going to be a new republic.
I mean, it has been a recurrent rhetoric by the president and his administration since his inauguration in 2019, December 2019, that he is basically listening to the people. He is implementing the demands of the people and of the Hirak, of the protest movement. But for me personally, when I look at the constitutional amendments and this whole process, I think I've got two remarks basically on the process and on the content. Basically, first of all, it's a disappointing process because in the midst of a pandemic, there was no serious dialogue. There were a lot of repressive policies, and there was only a facade of consultations with civil society actors, political and social actors as well. So for me, when you imprison journalists, when you imprison political activists, when you forbidden everybody from sharing their views, whether on social media or on the national TV, there is really no real process of consultations. For the system, after gaining the constitutional legitimacy, it's now trying and moving towards acquiring the new legal framework for the new civilian facade represented by Tebboune. This process is just meant to legitimize the current situation, portray it as stable, only to move forward with the snap legislative and local elections. When it comes to the content, it's not very different from the 2016 constitution, perhaps only with the exception of sending troops abroad, limiting terms for MPs, transforming the Constitutional Council to Constitutional Court, and perhaps also some prerogatives for the head of government only if appointed by the parliament. For me, I could only say that this is not a constitution for the next decade as promised by the president and his administration. And finally, I think Algeria's problem was never really the constitution itself, it was the implementation of the constitution. If laws are put but not implemented, there is no real democratic change. And we've had fantastic constitutions before, or at least good constitutions. They weren't implemented. And Algeria is a country of no rules and no regulations, basically, that are implemented. So for me, I don't see the point of all this folkloric celebration of the Constitution.
Brahim, I want to play you some protesters who are protesting on a famous day, a historic day for Algeria, and that was October the 5th, which is the anniversary of the big 1988 pro-democracy protest. There is a whole history of protesting in Algeria. This is what they were saying on that day, thinking ahead to the idea of tweaking, amending the constitution. Let's have a listen.
We don't recognise this system in power, and this constitution, if passed, will plunge us into the abyss, just as the predecessors of those in power plunged us into the abyss. We do not recognise them.
I swear that whatever they do, we will not stop until we achieve independence. And I swear that we will continue to fight until this regime falls and this country achieves independence.
Dramatic defiance there, but does that represent how the country is feeling right now ahead of the referendum?
Absolutely. I think any assessment of the proposed constitution has to be sort of judged against the backdrop of the popular demands and aspirations. As you said, for 18 months, millions of people have been on the streets week in and week out, making various demands, but the four central demands that they've been making is an immediate end to military rule and the establishment of civilian democratic rule. The second demand is the socioeconomic justice, expressed through such slogans as "You have devoured the country, you kleptocrats." Basically challenging the oligarchic takeover and control of the Algerian economy and demanding a more equitable distribution of wealth, and the people want independence. As the clip you've just shown, people feel that they are under colonial rule. So these are the main grievances and the main demands, the main aspirations of the Algerian people, and slogans such as this is our country and our will shall reign supreme, is a deeply democratic demand that is not going to be sort of elided by political theater. So if we look if taken all together, these slogans and these demands are in fact, one could write a constitution from these demands. You know,
wasn't that the whole point of the protest in the first place? Because the movement, the Iraq movement was, we want a whole new political infrastructure. You don't want an amendment, you want a whole new political infrastructure. So you're saying the protest slogans, that should be, the people should be writing the constitution.
Absolutely, absolutely, and if you look closely at it, on the other hand, the proposed constitution that's on the table by the military oligarchy, represented by Mr. Tebboune, not only is diametrically opposed to the people's demands, both in form and in content. In form, as your guest just said, there has been people have been excluded from the process, from any form of participation. And then in terms of content, it in fact not only ignores the demands and the aspirations of people, but in fact undermines them. The four key areas that the new constitution intervenes in, there is a further concentration of powers in the hands of the executive. There is a consecration of a principle of impunity for state officials, and the two most dangerous, if you like, but also most contested aspects are the constitutionalization of the military's role and tutelage in political life, and the placing of the Algerian military under the service of neo-colonial powers that are involved in new scramble for Africa.
Yasmina, Zain. So what I'm hearing is that what this referendum is doing is the complete opposite of what the president says it is designed to do. So there is big pushback here. Also on YouTube, a lot of conversation. So I'm going to throw some of the thoughts to you from our YouTube audience. Yasmina, you start first. I want a brief answer coming back, because I'm going to share all of the comments with all of the guests. Ziri says, I highly doubt the new constitution will bring any meaningful progress and development. Yasmina, briefly respond to Ziri.
So the issue, like what Zain al-Abidine said, is that the Constitution, it has many principles, which is great. That they enshrine the people's rights, and are supposed to enshrine the democracy of Algeria. However, the main issue is in its implementation. So there can be a lot of talk around what Sunday's referendum, what kind of Algeria will develop, post Sunday. Right. But the reality really is that unless the constitution is not implemented, then we can say that Algeria cannot change.
Let me put this to you, Zain. Medben, thank you very much for your comment on YouTube. Medben says the same system is ruling the country. Only people have changed. It's a big mess in the country where men put other men in jail in order to rule. Zain, brief response to Medben.
I think it's correct. Looking at what happened in Algeria over the past 2 years, almost 2 years since the beginning of the protest movement, certain circles within the system used the Hirak or the protest movement to throw other circles in jail. And this was expected. This has been the case in Algeria during every single political upheaval in 1988, in 1965. Even in 1979, after Boumedien's death. So for me, what happened is the inevitable outcome of one thing: the inability of the protest movement to organize itself and to represent a real adversary of the system. And I could finish with one thought: is that Algerians like myself, or all the protesters, we expected the system to listen to us. We expected the system to actually implement our demands. except that the system is in its historical role to rule and to protect its interest. The only party or the only side who could actually implement what we demanded is us. And unfortunately, we have been unable, and I'm sorry for my frankness, we have been unable to organize ourselves and to represent an alternative.
Right. One more. Brahim, I'm going to put this to you. This is from Zirit. Zirit says, there's so much cynicism in YouTube right now, all from Algerians. There is no real change. The will of the people is still not present, just the ruling elite with a new facade. Brahim, briefly.
I think once again, the simulacrum political simulacra and theater that the military oligarchy has been engaged in for the last few decades is not working anymore with this generation of Algerians. The central question remains one of political legitimacy. And unless this is dealt with appropriately and genuinely, the movement is not going away. So to continue the current sort of the establishment lacking any political legitimacy, popular legitimacy, has sought to compensate for it by seeking international legitimacy. And that has cost it in the past to denationalize the country's resources. It has cost it to denationalize the economy, and now they are about to denationalize the Algerian military itself. So today, Algeria, instead of playing its, or fulfilling its potential and its mission of being an important actor in Africa, to bring together continental solidarity and integrity, it is about to become a stick in the hands of colonial powers with which to oppress and dispossess other Africans. And this is unacceptable from the perspective of the crushing majority of Algerians, first of all, and even more, what is even more humiliating is that the choice, the symbolism in the choice of the 1st of November, which is the 66th anniversary of the Algerian war for start of the Algerian war for liberation. There is almost they are trying to undermine the foundational myth of the Algerian nation, and on that day to turn it into a new colony, not a new republic.
So I guess it becomes so clear to me that even what seems the simplest question to ask you has a deep, complex answer. YouTubers, thank you so much. I want to bring us maybe away from the Constitution just a little bit to what is happening in Algeria to everyday people in the last 18 months or so. Look at this headline here from Human Rights Watch: Algeria post-election repression. Perhaps one symbol of that repression is what has happened to a journalist who had been covering the protests, and he was jailed. His name is Khaled Drarini, and he was handed a jail sentence. We have a little comment here from his lawyer who puts the jail sentence in the context of the upcoming referendum and puts those two issues together. Let's have a listen.
This is a shocking decision that was not expected. This establishes a state that doesn't respect the law, doesn't respect the press, and doesn't respect basic freedoms. How can they promote a new constitution while trampling on the freedoms guaranteed in the same constitution?
Yasmina, you're a journalist. How does this story resonate with you, and what it means to be in Algeria right now, to live through this moment?
It's incredibly unsettling because obviously when you look at the nature of the country and the potential it has, it's really disappointing to see how so many Algerians are choosing to actually leave the country or to seek better prospects elsewhere because they know that their future in the country is limited. There isn't much scope for opportunities for them once they've done their education, and again there's this leaders here who are supposed to be for the people, they're supposed to be leading the people, are instead cracking down on dissent and those who are voicing, the type of direction they would like Algeria to go in. So the crackdown that we've seen under Tebboune has been one of the worst in Algeria's recent history, and that does lead questions exactly what direction the country is going in the backdrop of a crashing economy and civil strife threatening to ignite. So the situation at the moment is extremely tense, and it doesn't aid the situation that instead of honouring the demands of the people or in honouring the demands of the Constitution, for example, in Article 7 and 8, which enshrines the sovereignty of the people, instead they're silencing the voices of the population and, for their own, serving their own interests and their own longevity.
Ben Sadna on YouTube says transparency and free press is needed in Algeria. So many good comments and questions coming from you YouTubers. I really appreciate this. I'm going to use one more from YouTube. William says, what does the opinion poll suggest regarding the referendum? Will Algerians support it? They didn't come out in big numbers for the presidential election. What do you feel might happen on Sunday? Zain, you start.
I think we're starting from a wrong assumption that the polls actually matter.
Good point.
What we've seen throughout the entire Algerian contemporary history is that polls actually don't matter. What matters is the system's plan. The system's plan is to actually put forward this constitution. If the system plan was not to endorse this constitution or was not to pass it, they would have cancelled the constitutional referendum, especially with the current pandemic situation in Algeria.
Zain, I'm going to share this question with your three co-panelists. So very briefly, what do you think might happen on Sunday? What do you think, Zain? Zain, you don't need to finish mid-sentence, but you do have to finish the sentence. Go ahead, don't leave us hanging. But briefly.
So basically, what I think will happen, this constitution will likely pass, will probably pass.
Will likely pass. Good way to end and pass on to Brahim.
Make certain assumptions.
Yes, I hear you. Brahim, let's see what assumptions he's going to make. Go ahead.
It might pass, but not because the people vote for it, but because the constitutions and elections pass irrespective of what the people think. Moving ahead, I think this is what needs to be kept in mind. The question, the crisis of legitimacy that the Asian Algerian military oligarchy is suffering from, cannot possibly be solved through theatrics and staged simulacrums. We're with dropping oil prices, which are the main source of foreign currency
Brahim,
income
I hate
the country.
To hurry an analyst in midstream. Finish your sentence and then pass on to Yasmina.
All I'm saying that the country as it is right now is heading with it, full speed head first towards bankruptcy. They may resort to foreign borrowing by
Yasmina
the end of
is now going to pick up from you. Thank you so much, Brahim.
Right.
So what to expect? Some people will vote. Many have called for boycotts, but the end result is pretty much predetermined, and there's unlikely to have significant changes after Sunday.
I am going to ask forgiveness from Zain and Brahim and Yasmina and YouTubers. We are talking about Algeria. We can't rush the conversation. Do you know what? I already knew that. Have a look here on my laptop. This is a story you may well have seen on Aljazeera.com. In Algeria, a new constitution protesters did not call for. Do you see who wrote this? This is Rami Alahoum. Rami Alahoum is going to be on Instagram with me at AJ Stream at 20:30 GMT because we cannot rush a conversation about Algeria. If you're not available on Thursday at 20:30 GMT, you can watch it anytime. Just go back to the IGTV page of Al Jazeera, the stream. And then, while I am teasing big stream events, you need to be with us on Friday, October the 30th at 2000 GMT for a 4 hours discussion about the upcoming US election. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time. Take care.